I can't see the forest for the trees. That used to never make any sense to me until I studied Greek. What it means is that it is possible to get so lost in the details of something that you lose your perspective. You forget the sense of the whole. Now we live in a sort of highly organized forest called an almond orchard. Everything is in nice, neat rows, and it reminds me of Greek. Greek is a very orderly language. In fact, people who like order tend to like Greek. But the problem is when you start to zoom in and focus on all of the individual concepts, tense, voice, mood, person, number, case, gender, post, positive, dr, there's all these terms flying around that you lose it and you say, I can't see the forest for the trees, and you just need to back out. You need to always have this big perspective because Greek is nicely laid out and you need this big picture. So in this video, what we will do is lay out the grammar, the big picture, the grid that goes over Greek. Now this is helpful not just for Greek, but for any language. It is very important that you understand the parts of speech that we will go over in this video. So let's do it. Let's get a feel for this forest.
Here it is, just about as zoomed out as you can get, our parts of speech. And you can see I've broken them into substance. These are words that don't move, okay? Nouns, articles, adjectives, and pronouns. And then we have our motion words, words that do move, verbs and adverbs, participles and infinitives. And then words that connect, relationship words, conjunctions, and prepositions. Zooming in just a little bit closer, here are our substance words. Notice that I color code these. You can think red for stop if you want. But our substance words are nouns, which name things, articles, which in English are the and a. The is the definite article, a is the indefinite article. We have our adjectives, which modify nouns, the brown dog, for example, and pronouns, which are little words that stand in for nouns. He, she, and it, for example. Now, under motion, as we scroll down here, we find our verbs, which of course are our action words that put things into motion. Adverbs are modifiers of verbs. Usually they are ly words in English. Participles, which are in English ing words. And they're strange because they are partly verbal and partly adjectival. They modify nouns, like hunting dog, for example, hunting is a very verbal idea, but hunting here is acting like an adjective describing the dog. So participles are sort of a strange hybrid. And then we have our infinitives, which in English are the to be verbs. To learn, to sit, to laugh, to whatever. Now obviously there's a lot more information here about Greek, but we'll get into that, don't worry, okay? And then we have our relationship words, which will be all blue. And these are the conjunctions. Conjunctions are sort of like, chains or links that hook words and ideas together. And then prepositions do more to define the relationship. I like the idea, anything you can do with a box, in it, under it, around it, through it, etc. So you can see here we have our parts of speech. It's very important to understand these parts of speech. Now, I understand this is English, really, not Greek, but you really can't do Greek without grammar, and here's your basic grammar.
The first thing we do when we enter this amazing world is start to point and name. Mama, or Dada. And that is my mother and father, by the way. My dad is just as silly as I am. Lake, or puppy, or perhaps tractor. These are the things, and we could go on and on, of course. There are as many words as there are things. And so nouns are the substantives. They are the persons, places, and things that make up our world.
One of the ways that will help us to make sense of all this Greek is that I have color-coded the words. So our nouns will all be in red. So take a look at your color-coded text and you can find all the nouns.
As our understanding of language grows, we start to use articles. So instead of just saying tractor, we might say the tractor, meaning specifically that tractor. That is the definite article in English, the. Or we might point to a lake and just say, a lake, meaning like any old lake. That is the indefinite article in English. It just gives us a little bit more information about the noun. It tells us whether it is definite, that specific one, the tractor, or indefinite, any old lake, for example.
Even though we don't know our Greek articles yet, you probably could guess that I have colored those red as well. So we have an article and a noun, the god, in this case, ton theon. Articles all over the place, always colored red.
And as we get more sophisticated with language, we might attach an adjective. Adjectives modify nouns. They just give us a little more information about the noun. So we might say, for example, big tractor, or peaceful lake, or cute puppy. These are just words that give us a little more information about the nouns. Adjectives modify nouns.
In my color-coded text, I have colored the adjectives just a little off red, or peach, or I'm not sure quite what that color is. We'll just call it light red, but you can see there aren't as many adjectives, but there are a few floating around here and there.
When we grow weary of saying the same noun over and over and over again, we might use a pronoun. A pronoun is a little word that stands in for a noun. So I might say, my mother is my biggest fan. She always sees the best in me. She always sees the best. She is the pronoun. Or I might say, my dad is my truest friend. He is always there for me. He is always there for me. Or a mountain lake fills my soul with peace. It never lets me down. It, standing in for the mountain lake, right? Okay? Or I might say, puppies are cute. They make me laugh. They, standing in for puppies, okay? So in each of these cases, she, he, it, they, we have these little words that stand in for nouns called pronouns.
Pronouns are colored orange in the color-coded text, and you can see there are a lot of them. Look at this sea of orange. There are pronouns in just about every verse, super common in Greek as in English. Just pointing out they are everywhere, so we must make peace with pronouns. These orange critters.
So that does it for the substantives. They're all down there on the red end of the color spectrum. If it helps you, think red for stop. These are the things of the world. And as we've seen, we will color nouns red. The article we will also color red. Adjectives will be sort of a lighter shade of red. And the pronouns we will color orange. Anytime you see these colors, think substantives. One thing for sure about this crazy world, it does not sit still. And that can be sort of frustrating because you always are wanting to bring order and get things lined up and set. And it's hard because everything's always moving. Everything is always changing. And so we need a whole set of action words to put things into motion. Now, of course, the most common action word is simply the verb. The verb is the action word. So, for example, the tractor digs. The man jumps.
Whoa.
And by the way, that was very cold. The water flows beautifully down the mountainside. The puppies run across the yard. So these are the action words. These are the verbs.
I've chosen green for the verbs, and you can see them here. Green for go, if you want to think of it that way. These are action words. These are things that are happening, shining, overcoming, sending, things like that.
Adverbs are added to verbs to give us a little bit more information about the action that's taking place. So we might say the tractor digs busily, or the man jumps crazily. The water flows freely. The puppies run wildly. Notice that all of these adverbs end in ly. Most adverbs do in English. But they're just added to verbs, right? Adverbs. You add an adverb to the verb to give you a little more information about that action word.
Adverbs are not as common as many of the other parts of speech, but there are a few. I color them light green. If you'll notice, remember that the nouns were red and the adjectives, which modify nouns, were light red. Well, verbs are green and adverbs, which modify them, are light green.
We come now to a crazy hybrid called the participle. The participle is a verbal adjective. What that means is that it has some things in common with verbs and other things in common with adjectives. So, for example, I might talk about the jumping man. Jumping is the participle. And you look at that word, you say jumping, well, that's an action word, right? But jumping is being used like an adjective there to describe the man. The jumping man. Or I might talk about the flowing stream. Flowing is the participle. It's being used to describe the stream, but it's a verbal idea. So you get it? A verbal adjective. When we get into it, we'll see that participles can also be used adverbially. So I might say, the tractor makes a lot of noise while digging. Okay? Or I might say, the puppies are exhausted after running. In this case, the participles are actually modifying verbs. They are acting adverbially, but more about that later. The main thing is to notice that the participles in English are the ing words. Now in Greek, it won't be quite that simple. Actually, it will be spectacular. It will combine verbal ideas and substantival ideas, and they will come together, and it will be this explosion of Greek goodness, which may actually drive you crazy. But if you're following it so far, the participles are really an amazing part of speech in Greek. But for now, just remember, participles are the ing words. They are verbal adjectives.
I capture this strange dual nature of the participle by double coloring the word. It's partly a motion thing, right? And it's partly a substantive. So it's green and red. Participles will be mainly green, but you'll see that the endings of the participles will be colored slightly red, which is sort of strange. Here's another one right here, for example. Green and red.
We also have to get used to another hybrid called an infinitive. An infinitive is a verbal noun, okay? Because it has some qualities similar to a verb and some qualities similar to a noun. In English, these are the to be verbs, to something verbs, okay? Like to laugh, to hunt, to love, to leap, to live, to whatever, fill in the blank. And when you see how these function in a sentence, the to whatever winds up acting like a noun in the sentence. So it's a verbal noun. Okay, so the purpose of a tractor is to dig. So to dig there is like acting like a substantive, even though it's a verbal concept, okay? The man is trying to cool off. Or the streams flow down from the glaciers to fill the lake. Or to run is a puppy's greatest joy. In every case, the to something is acting like a noun in the sentence, even though it's a verbal idea. Infinitives are verbal nouns. In English, it's the to something words.
Now, I have simply left the infinitives colored green. They look just like the other verbs, but you'll notice they are the to be verbs. Here we have to come, or a little bit further down here, we have plain old to be, right here, ani. Infinitives aren't as common in Greek as many of the other parts of speech, especially in John's Gospel. The Greeks use the infinitive in ways that are a little different than we do in English, and it takes a little sophistication to use infinitives well. John's a pretty simple writer, so he doesn't use many infinitives.
So that does it for our motion words. We have our verbs, which we will simply color green. We have adverbs, which modify verbs, and we will color those light green. Participles are those annoying verbal adjectives. We will color them green with a little red to show their ornery nature. And then infinitives, we will just color green. Conjunctions are the ultimate relationship word. They're always bringing things together, man. So, for example, it might bring together two nouns. It might bring together two ideas. It might bring together two clauses. My mom and dad are wonderful people. See how and brought my mother and father together? Mom and dad. Conjunction, and brought them together, right? How about this? The tractor is digging because our neighbors are putting in a pool. Two ideas. The tractor is digging and Our neighbors are putting in a pool, connected causally by this conjunction because. The tractor is digging because our neighbors are putting in a pool. Or I might say, my sister warned me not to jump in the lake, but I did it anyway. My sister warned me, I did it anyway, connected by but. Or I could say like, streams flow down from the glaciers since water always flows downhill. Another causal idea. So you get the idea. Conjunctions bring things together and sort of define the relationship between them a little bit.
I have colored conjunctions dark blue. As you can see, they are all over the place and they are very important to spot. If you can spot the conjunctions, it helps you figure out how to break the sentences into the right pieces. Now you might be noticing this word kai all over the place. It's just the conjunction and it is the most common word in the Greek New Testament, kai. But that's not the only conjunction. We have hina here and Allah, and there are others, of course.
Prepositions are also relationship words, but they define one thing with respect to another thing. So I might say, I jumped in the lake. So in the lake, here's me, here's the lake, I am in it. You see how it shows this relationship and how these things are related together. I might say, before I jumped in the lake, we walked to the campground. So here's the campground and here's us walking, we walked to the campground. So it describes this relationship. Once we got there, we walked around the lake. I think the best way I have ever heard prepositions described is anything you can do with a box.
Beside the box, in the box, out of the box, around the box, under the box, through the box. You can see that I've colored prepositions light blue. You can also see that they are also very common in the New Testament, and they're always tied with some noun, okay? They're always pointing to something, okay? The relationship between this and that. So we need a this and a that. So here are some examples of prepositions all over the place.
So conjunctions and prepositions are our relationship words. Conjunctions are the great matchmaker. They bring things together, and we shall color them dark blue. Prepositions define one thing with respect to something else, and we will color those light blue.
So are you hyperventilating now? Are you getting nervous? Are you losing the forest for the trees? Please just remember, we're simply reviewing the parts of speech. We've looked at the substantives, our nouns, articles, adjectives, and pronouns. We've looked at our motion words, our verbs, adverbs, participles, and infinitives. And we've looked at relationship words, conjunctions, and prepositions.
So I hope that as we make our way through this class, you do not become lost in the minutiae, in the details. And when you do, when you start feeling that way, back up. Just back up, okay? And remember the panoramic view of the whole thing. Let me tell you, Greek is such an amazing language. It's so worth it to learn this thing. I mean, don't you want to just climb up there on this, like, well, that mountain would be even better and just say, I'm king of the world! And, because as you understand language better, you're able to see better, you're able to express yourself better, you're able to think better. So, I mean, it's one of the ways that we become fully alive is to learn language well. So anyway, I hope as we go through this class, you will not let those scary old trees bother you. You just back up and you remember this big panorama that we're after here. We're climbing a big mountain. I never said it was going to be easy. I just say it's going to be worth it.